Hey now, we are getting over, and I am the Silver King, Adam Silverstein, here to lead you through these hard times. With your 2025 NXT Stand and Deliver Ultimate Preview. That's right, Getting Over is back with just a couple days remaining before NXT Stand and Deliver, what is supposed to be the biggest event of the year for the brand, given it is taking place on WWE WrestleMania 41 weekend. We will discuss momentarily whether that is actually the case, and we will break down everything that happened this week in NXT as we go ahead and preview that premium live event for all of you. We will be breaking down each match on the show, the storylines coming in, our predictions, expectations coming out of NXT Stand and Deliver, and whether this will be the final night, actually day, in NXT for particular talents. We have a ton of show to get to today. We have a ton of shows to share with you this WWE WrestleMania 41 week. So the Silver King is not wasting any further time. Off the top, allow me to remind you that the Getting Over Wrestling podcast
is all about Defy.
So head over to Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Leave a 5-star rating. On Apple, take a little extra time. Leave a 5-star written review. If you do, we will read it live right here on the show. And let me just double back and stress, while doing all that stuff for Apple is super important, it is also important to rate us 5 stars on Spotify. We know we have a lot of first-time listeners and new listeners on that platform. Those 5-star ratings over there, immensely important. Please go ahead and do that. Don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube at Getting Overcast. Not only do you get full-length audio, if that is your chosen medium to listen to the show, you get full-length video interviews as well, 2 already for 2025 with Drew McIntyre and NXT play-by-play man Vic Joseph. So again, subscribe on YouTube at Getting Overcast. Don't forget to follow us on social media at Getting Overcast on Twitter, at Getting Over on Blue Sky. You get episode drops, news, analysis, highlights, all of that good stuff. You can also send in questions and comments for the show that we will utilize in our special instant analysis podcasts and or our second look episodes coming next week right in this space. But you can hit us up there and on Twitter. You can vote in pre and post show polls surrounding premium live events. We will have 6 of them this weekend alone for NXT Stand and Deliver, WWE WrestleMania Night 1 and Night 2. So be sure to follow us on social media. Lastly, here at Getting Over,
I happen to love the number 5.
and I hope you do as well. For $5 a month, $50 for the entire year, you can become an official Getting Overhead. Just visit buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Sign up. You'll get bonus audio, the fastest 5 minutes in professional wrestling, instant reactions to every major show, exclusive news analysis posts as well. You get it at buymeacoffee.com/gettingover, and you financially support the continuation of the Getting Over Wrestling podcast. Now, as I alluded to just moments ago at the start of the show, look, NXT Stand and Deliver, it is supposed to be the tentpole premium live event for WWE's developmental brand. And what's immensely interesting going into this year's Stand and Deliver is that some of the matches feel that way, others do not. And that is largely because the go-home episode of NXT on Tuesday featured 2 number 1 contenderships and 2 qualifiers for another match on the show. They also announced 2 additional matches for NXT Stand and Deliver on Tuesday night. So it was a very late build. And one of the significant reasons that has been the case is because NXT has been doing these special episodes for the CW. The show at the Madison Square Garden Theater in New York in particular stands out to me because that was basically an old school NXT takeover free on television. There were major matches there that you would think were set for Stand and Deliver or could have been set for Stand and Deliver. And instead of those transpiring on this show, you're getting nearly 40 superstars wrestling across 7 matches on a show that starts at 9:30 a.m. local time in Las Vegas, which is going to be immensely interesting. That's when the kickoff portion of Stand and Deliver begins. The main card starts at 10 a.m. Pacific, obviously 1 p.m. Eastern. There's a lot of complications with that as well. When wrestlers have to show up at these venues, it's usually 4 to 5 hours before the shows begin. That way they can prep, they can meet with producers, do any last minute stuff, and also just for WWE to make sure that everyone's in attendance and accounted for. The call time, reportedly, for NXT Stand and Deliver is 5 a.m. Pacific. There's going to be people in the ring wrestling around 9:30, 9:45 a.m., and then the main card is going to start at 10 a.m. What is that going to be like for the wrestlers? These people all perform in the late afternoon and evening and have for some people years, for others decades. What's it going to be like for the fans in Las Vegas coming out of potentially SmackDown and maybe even the WWE Hall of Fame the night before? Are they going to be the typical energy level that we expect from NXT fans or from WWE fans from WrestleMania weekend? These are all major meatballs that are just kind of hanging out there that we don't have answers to right now. But the things that we do have answers to are what is on the NXT Stand and Deliver card, what happened Tuesday on the Go Home show for NXT Stand and Deliver, and that is what the Silver King is here to deliver to you right here on the Ultimate Preview. So let's not waste any more time getting into it. We'll first talk about some more significant developments that happened on NXT that were longer segments leading into matches that were ultimately booked for Stand and Deliver. And then we will go ahead and break down the entire card, match by match, prediction by prediction. At the end, of course, we will have a pre-show expectation grade for NXT Stand and Deliver. All of you will have the opportunity to vote and share your expectation grade on Twitter at GettingOvercast. We will post one poll before the show, another after the show with your final grade. All of that factors into our instant analysis, which, by the way, we will be posting before WWE WrestleMania Night 1 begins. So it's going to be a crazy Saturday for the Silver King. We're having one episode posted in the afternoon on Saturday, another posted in the evening. That allows me to actually transition into a quick update on our WrestleMania week schedule right here on the Getting Over Wrestling podcast, just because clearly I missed it at the start of the show. Already in the podcast feed, in case you missed it for some reason, the WWE WrestleMania 41 Ultimate Preview. It is formatted exactly like this show is going to be. We discuss everything that happened on television across the last week. We went a little bit deeper on the Monday Night Raw Go Home show because it is the final major episode that we could discuss before WrestleMania. Everything that happens Friday night on SmackDown, we will try to contain it within the Night 1 or Night 2 instant analysis episodes. But the WWE WrestleMania 41 Ultimate Preview already in the podcast feed, obviously right here. Thursday morning, you're getting your NXT Stand and Deliver Ultimate Preview. On Friday, we're going to have a bonus WWE episode. I'm not sure what time that is going to come out. Originally, we were planning to release it in the morning. However, there are some major quote-unquote scheduled interviews with WWE superstars and talent that will be transpiring early in the day on the West Coast, and we're trying to figure out whether to tape the show before or after those. Previously, I think last year, those interviews all happened on Thursday, so when we taped the Friday show, we had all that already done. We're just trying to figure out the best way to present this to you because we don't want to do the show Friday night. If we do that, all of a sudden it's Friday night, Saturday afternoon, Saturday night, 3 episodes in less than 24 hours, and that's not going to be good for business. That's not going to be good for anybody. Saturday afternoon, your NXT Stand and Deliver instant analysis. Saturday night and Sunday night, your WWE WrestleMania 41 instant analysis. We do it all for you guys. 6 WWE episodes in 1 week. It is WrestleMania week, the biggest and best time of the year for professional wrestling, and we cannot wait to deliver all of this performance-enhancing audio to your ear holes. And if you're wondering what about AEW this week, just like we did last year, I believe, like we did the year before, we're going to do a double dose of AEW next week. 4 television episodes, 1 podcast. Wish us luck. We will knock it out, I promise, but it's just way too intense, all the WWE stuff this week. We didn't want to try to throw an AEW show in as well. So with that said, let's just get into it. Your NXT Stand and Deliver 2025 Ultimate Preview. We're going to break down every single match on the show, along with everything that happened on television Tuesday night, directly leading into it. Now, there were 2 brand new matches booked on the show, and we're going to discuss those right off the top. The first, and just stay with me here as I break it down for you, it is a women's tag team #1 contendership match that is going to be held on the countdown at Stand and Deliver, and then the titles will be defended by whomever walks out of WWE WrestleMania 41 as champion this coming Tuesday on NXT. Ava backstage was again surrounded by women arguing in her face. She announced this originally as a triple threat match, saying that the winners would, of course, get the title shot 72 hours later. Everyone seemed really happy with this because they were paired up. But Roxanne Perez obviously complained because she isn't in a team. Ava said she could join, making it a fatal four-way as long as she finds a partner. Roxy continued complaining later, saying she couldn't find one and she would just be her own partner. I did think it was a miss. They didn't show her going up to other talent backstage, asking to team and having them turn her down. But then if she went ahead and did that, it wouldn't necessarily make sense because why would you turn down an opportunity to be on the show, right? So maybe that's why they didn't do it. But anyway, Roxy's like, hey, I'm going to be my own partner. I'll just wrestle myself. Ava's like, no effing way. So Cora Jade comes in basically saying Perez clearly didn't want this bad enough because all she had to do was say, I'm sorry. Unfortunately, production cut her off right as she was making this point. It kind of ruined this segment by not delivering the clinching line and that reaction fully. And it was one of 3 different times Tuesday night on NXT that production screwed up something pretty important. But the match was made official, and the presumption that we were left with was that Perez and Jade are going to team. And indeed, a match graphic came out, and they are indeed teaming. So I just said indeed twice for no reason. Perez and Jade are one team, the Meta Girls, Fatal Influence, and then Tatum Paxley and Gigi Dolan. Those are the 4 teams competing in this number 1 contendership for the women's tag team championships. Now look, while the men's division in NXT probably has one too many titles with the Heritage Cup right now, I gotta say, this is proof that it probably should have a women's tag team strap. Now, I know I have been long supportive of the decision to merge the NXT title with the WWE title. And that was because the women's championships for the tag teams, as originally constituted, were meant to be defended across all 3 brands. And credit to WWE Creative these days, because that's actually happening. They've been defended in NXT multiple times of late. We've also seen women's tag teams from the main roster come down to NXT, even for non-title matches. But the women's division in NXT right now is so ridiculously strong that it just feels like the tag teams need a more consistent spot on the card. And yeah, adding a title helps accomplish that. Now, as far as this match goes, I'm glad it's happening and more women are getting on the show. There's going to be 18 women wrestling on Stand and Deliver compared to 15 men. Hell, the main roster is only going to have 11 women competing across 2 nights of basically 8 hours. And NXT is getting 18 into 3 hours. That is immensely impressive. Now, that's because there's multi-person and multi-team matches, sure, but it is nevertheless happening. So that's a huge positive. On the other hand, putting Roxanne on an NXT countdown match is the height of absurdity. It is now crystal clear that she was on the wrong end of a plans change situation with Bayley on WrestleMania weekend. I would love to know what happened there, whether it was due to expectations of having Becky Lynch available to fight Lyra Valkyria, and since that didn't materialize, all of a sudden it's Bayley teaming with Lyra against Liv Morgan and Raquel Rodriguez to make sure there's a quality match there, and because of that, you can't do Bayley and Roxanne, which was clearly being built, it seemed like, for WrestleMania weekend on one show or the other. I always assumed it was going to happen on Stand and Deliver. But my hope now, because Roxy is in this countdown show match, is that it's not her NXT send-off. If WWE wants to call her up to the main roster, this should lead to further Perez-Jade issues and either a loser leaves town match or just a regular grudge match where Roxanne goes out on her back. Now, in terms of predicting this match, there's only really 2 options for the winners, given the Meta Girls have already fought for the titles a couple of times. It needs to be Perez and Jade to create a major tune-in match with Liv and Raquel on NXT next week. What you could do is have them fail to win the titles, you split them up, and that's the way you book their grudge match, and then you send Roxy to the main roster afterward. The other option is Tatum Paxley and Gigi Dolan. That way Paxley gets a huge featured spot on TV. And this actually reminds me to ask, once again, where the hell is Shotzi? She made so much sense in a trio with them. A trio, by the way, that would actually work on the main roster. But she's just completely disappeared. It's a shame. I really like her. So as far as I'm concerned, those are your two options. It's either Paxley and Dolan, or it's Perez and Jade. And if you're booking this match and doing it in this way, and you're guaranteeing a title match 72 hours later, I actually believe the correct booking is Roxy and Cora winning this, and then again, losing to Liv and Raquel, getting into a fight, having a singles match, and then that's the way Roxy gets called up to the main roster. Now, look, 12 months ago, on this very episode, we had a extended conversation about how Perez was not ready for main roster WWE, should not be called up, 23 years old, she didn't need to be up there, so on and so forth. And I kind of want to, do a little Barry Horowitz here, because the entire last year has proven that to be correct. Not that she was untalented or not ready to go in the ring or anything like that, but she had basically just been a babyface for her entire career. She needed to work on those heel chops, her character, her promo, all of that. And we saw that develop immensely over the last year in NXT, just like we did previously when Braun Breaker spent those extra 6 months there than a lot of other people anticipated, right? The issue with Roxy now is you could bring her up to the main roster, and she's been featured on television enough where it just makes sense for her to get the call up. But at the same time, the NXT women's division is so strong that you almost salivate a little bit at the idea of her fighting Jordynne Grace again and getting Stephanie Vaquer and fighting Julia and having a 4-way with them or a 3-way with some combination of them. And get your mind out of the gutter when I say that, please. And I just don't know that if she goes to the main roster, either the Raw after WrestleMania, or ideally, if they do this thing with Cora that I'm suggesting and predicting here, a month from now, or maybe she debuts in like the Queen of the Ring tournament or something like that. I don't know that she's not going to quickly get lost in the shuffle, just because there's so many immensely talented women on the main roster and so many of them involved in major matches and feuds. But on the other hand, I guess if you bring her up and you get her immediately involved in that feud with Bayley, just rekindle what they were doing, that would be something to tide her over for a period of time. And yeah, they do have a lot of different divisions now with the mid cards and all that. Maybe you just factor in immediately after she, let's say, beats Bayley, 6 months from now, you get her into a feud with Lyra Valkyria or whoever the champion is at that time, Intercontinental or United States, and she just factors right into the mid card. So, perhaps this is the right time. I will tell you this. If she comes up on the Raw after WrestleMania or a couple of weeks later or a month later, whatever the case might be, you're not going to hear any protests from the Silver King. She's ready. She did the extra character work she needed to do. And she is more than capable of being a main roster WWE superstar. I'm glad she got the extra time. And I believe it benefited everyone. It benefited the women's division in WWE because other people got featured. And it benefited her because A, she didn't get called up without a plan. And B, she was able to develop the character and promo, which she badly needed to. She's still developing, though. I mean, people need to understand that. You bring Roxy up to the main roster, she's not going to go up there and be an A-level promo. Now, to be candid, you bring Jada Parker up to the main roster, she might be the best promo in the entire women's division, but she'd be a C-level wrestler, right? So you have to have most of the package there. Roxy's going to get there. She's going to develop. And at this point, the reason why they're probably going to move her up sooner than later, whether, again, it's Raw after WrestleMania, a couple of weeks, a month, a couple months, whatever the case, it's because the talent in NXT is so strong that they don't need her anymore. And that's the best compliment you can actually give to what the NXT women's division is doing right now. So the official prediction, Roxy and Cora, I laid it all out for you. Let's move on to the next match. It's going to be the D'Angelo family against Dark State in a 6-man tag team match. Now you may say, well, Silver King, how did we get to this when there was supposed to be this whole parking lot showdown this week? I'm about to tell you. Every time someone arrived in the parking lot, NXT teased on Tuesday that it was for the D'Angelo family Dark State meetup. It got a little bit annoying, actually. We also saw Dark State stalking behind Oba Femi at one point. Eventually, an hour or two of the show, D'Angelo family exited their vehicles in all black without Tony D himself, but with reinforcements beyond the wrestlers. Stax informed this was his call. Luca Crucifino first questioned him, then they backed him up. And it was shot cinematically to a degree, but somewhat confusingly at first, given it seemed like the family had just murked Dark State immediately with crowbars. Apparently, it was more even than that. The main guys almost immediately got pushed backstage rather than actually fight in the parking lot like what was promoted. Osiris Griffin got double speared through a really thick piece of drywall. Stacks avoided a heavy locker getting dumped on him. Crucifino took a double Uranagi into a car hood. D'Angelo finally arrived really late to save Stacks. He beat the shit out of all 4 Dark State guys with a crowbar. There were tons of sound effects added, which was so cartoonish to the entire deal. And then eventually the cops arrived. Stacks was like, yo, we got to go. There's cops. Tony said, hey, these are my guys. I called them. Then he admonished Stacks for not listening to him because he said he had a plan the entire time. And he demanded that Stacks not defy him again. Tony announced that they were going to have a match at Stand and Deliver. And then they hugged. So this brawl, it was extremely B-movie. The whole thing was overly chaotic, pretty tough to follow, just given everyone was dressed the same, yet there were random bodies thrown in for no reason. There was one blonde dude with long hair that just somehow was part of either the family or Dark State, despite us never seeing him before. There are parts of wrestling that are silly and absurd. And if you like that stuff, then this was completely for you. I'm not going to tell you what to enjoy. For me, this was basically the definition of too much. It was more NXT 2.0 than NXT White and Gold, which is what we've been getting of late. I'm not saying I didn't like it. I just wish this was treated a tad more seriously and less campy, less corny. The sound effects really took me out of it. The end was by far the best part. Tony shows up because this guy looks like a total badass when he gets out of the car. He was like Stone Cold Steve Austin, but actually dressed in a dapper suit. One of his coolest looks yet. He has his crowbar. He is just beating the ever-loving shit out of 4 dudes. They all run away. And he could not have looked more like a main eventer. He never has looked more like a main eventer in his entire life than he did in this segment. So, look, as far as the booking goes, Wrestling Logic would state that Stacks is tired of being under Tony D's thumb, so he's going to ditch him and take over Dark State. The problem is, I don't believe Dark State suddenly becomes better with Stacks, and D'Angelo family, if he was to leave, would be reduced to almost nothing without him. And that would tell me that D'Angelo family would be breaking up entirely, Tony D getting the call up to the main roster, and the others, Luca Crucifino and Adriano Rizzo, going off on their own. And I don't know that that's necessary, nor do I believe that D'Angelo in his current gimmick is main roster ready. He certainly is as a character actor, as a promo, he's pretty solid. In ring, he's been ready for that. But if you're going to bring up D'Angelo, I don't think you can use this mafioso gimmick. And if you did, you would just have to at least tweak it enough so it's not Mafia Don, which is a very NXT gimmick, and it's more Italian gangster type of gimmick. And that could potentially work. Almost a mix between what he is presently and what they tried to do with Giovanni Vinci. So I'm saying like 75% of Tony Dean, like 25% of what Vinci would have been. And if you do something like that, it could actually work. But there is no way, getting to this match, that you're putting Dark State in a premium live event, their first major match, a big time showing for them, and having them lose. It's just, you're not going to do that. So the easy prediction is Dark State beating D'Angelo family. Now they could pull a shocker and have D'Angelo family win and Dark State has to regroup, or perhaps they have involvement in the expected main event of the show, which is something we will certainly talk about momentarily. And if that is the case, then perhaps they do lose this. And it's almost like, to a degree, the Seth Rollins move where lose on the opening match and then stand tall in the main event. So that's possible. But if you're trying to establish this group and it's been met with some roadblocks from fans already, I've disagreed with almost all of the fan sentiment regarding them. Although this week it seems like they won a lot of people over. But you probably just need to have them win. And when Stacks can take the fall and Crucifino can take the fall, and granted, technically anyone on Dark State could take the fall, but when you have those two guys, it makes it easy to put the new faction over. And that's exactly what should happen here. Before we get to predicting what's going to happen on this show regarding Dark State and if someone is going to join them and take over as their leader. Let's put a pin in that because we do need to discuss them alongside the men's main event, which we, of course, will be doing in a few minutes. Let's shift over to the NXT Tag Team Championships. Fraxium defending against a team to be determined. So there was a tag team gauntlet on NXT. Hank and Tank opened by actually squashing Tyson DuPont and Tyreek Igwe with high-intensity offense. It became immediately clear that they would be winning this entire thing. And really, that should have been obvious given their longer-term storyline, but for some reason, the Silver King was completely blind to it all the last couple of weeks. The culling was next. They actually flashed a couple nice tag team moves and some chops too, just in terms of like the way they worked the match, the way they worked the referee. Tank countered a Doomsday style move into a Spanish crossbody for a surprising fall. NQCC was next. Hank and Tank remained wild until Miles Bourne crushed them with an awesome tope con hero. This kid, his arrow is pointing up in a major way. Hank and Tank won this portion with a surprise roll-up. Josh Briggs and Yoshiki Inamura, they were last. Hank caught Briggs with an inside cradle, but Inamura dove to break the fall. However, he fell just an inch short, and the referee was able to finish his count. The faces here, Hank and Tank, got the 1, 2, 3. My lone problem with this gauntlet match is that so much of it was contested without tagging. It was done that way on purpose because they wanted pure chaos and energy for Hank and Tank. The idea being that is how they thrive. It's them being the team they were meant to be, as the Street Profits told them they should be last week. Once they figured that out, in this match at least, they were unstoppable running the entire gauntlet. But when it comes to tag team wrestling, the rules are important. I criticize it elsewhere. I'm going to criticize it in this spot too. Beyond that, because it was so chaotic and it had so much energy, this thing went 20 minutes. With this many teams in a gauntlet, you got to be at 25 or 30. That said, this was wrestled at such a breakneck pace that it was crazy, crazy fun bell to bell. I loved the booking concept here of Hank and Tank overcoming all the teams that they had lost to across the last few months, all in a single match. It's actually a pretty wholesome story, all things considered. Just be yourself, and eventually that will be enough. It's really cool. Now, for me, Fraxium versus Hank and Tank, it is not a stand and deliver level match, given all the alternatives and all the options. But you know what? If you were to open the show with this, it may be the only way to get wrestlers and fans juiced going off at 10 a.m. Pacific time. Now, before we get to a prediction for the match, Hank and Tank celebrated backstage, saying they finally learned their tag team style. Fraxium interrupted, proud of them. Axiom was obviously praising. Nathan Frazier suggested they had absolutely no chance against them. Didn't really add that much, but it was fine. Again, for a show like Stand and Deliver and a tag team like Fraxium, this should have been a hotter, more involved, frankly, much, much bigger storyline. And I see there's a lot of sentiment out there right now that it is time for Fraxium to get called up to the main roster, and therefore it is time for them to lose the titles to Hank and Tank. I agree with 50% of that statement. It has been beyond time for Fraxium to get called up to the main roster in WWE. They are the best tag team in the world right now. Not in the United States, not in WWE, not in NXT, in the world. They're better than any team that's going on in Japan, any team that's going on in the United States. I will admit I have a blind spot to Mexico, and I'm sure there are some luchadors down there that are doing great things in tag team wrestling, but the character, the story, the match quality, everything that Fraxium is doing is hitting at a 10 out of 10 right now. And they have beaten some of the best tag teams that could get thrown at them, at least from NXT. And obviously they had the great match with the Hardy Boys that they lost. I thought they should have won. And then rematch, that's a whole nother story for another day. But you're not going to end their run. At least NXT should not be ending their run by having them lose the titles to Hank and Tank, a team that just figured themselves out 72 hours before Stand and Deliver. So I do agree Fraxium should get called up. I believe they will be called up to the main roster soon. I would say the latest, the Raw or SmackDown after SummerSlam. I just don't believe it's going to happen coming out of Stand and Deliver, and therefore I have Fraxium retaining the NXT tag team titles, even though they're facing a babyface team, even though it's the biggest NXT show of the year. Given all the teams they've beaten, all the talent they've beaten, all the quality matches that they've had. And I know these guys are bigger and stronger, theoretically, but they are such neophytes. I would probably be really frustrated to see Firaxium come out of this, lose, and then just go right to the main roster. But then again, if WWE has a big-time storyline for them, which when is that ever the case with tag teams, especially those that get called up from NXT, if they do and they're going to win the titles soon after they get called up, then perhaps I won't have as much of a problem with it. But the official prediction is it is Firaxium retaining the titles. The North American Championship will be on the line. Ricky Saints defending against an opponent to be determined. I told you guys there were 2 number 1 contenderships on the show, 2 qualifiers, and 2 matches made fresh for NXT Stand and Deliver, all on the Go Home show. So we had Ethan Page, Eddie Thorpe, Wesley, and Lexis King in a number 1 contendership. This cold opened NXT with Saints on commentary. Super fun spot in which King stacked 3 dudes in the corner, but all 3 of them, one after another, dodged a spear and he hit the post anyway. Page caught Lee with a great draping codebreaker. Wes later based a huge Tower of Doom. Page threw Thorpe into Saints, who pushed back, got ejected, which I don't think I've ever seen happen to someone at the desk before. I'm sure it has. I just can't remember it. Page and Thorpe simultaneously locked King in a Boston Crab and a crossface, respectively, but Lee stopped a submission by sliding in and grabbing his arm. Page had King in an electric chair and Thorpe in a DDT, so West did Whisper in the Wind into the trio, and they just executed the double moves. King had a Swanton bomb, but there was a really bad camera angle showing them like getting in position. That way Thorpe could break a cover with an elbow drop. King pulled Lee off a cover for Coronation. Page caught King with Twisted Grin, got the win. Page cut a promo after the bell, so Saints ran through the crowd, perfect camera shot of this, and blindsided him with a spear. I gotta tell you, the level to which this match over-delivered was straight up ridiculous. I had 0 expectations coming in. I watched it while I was up insanely late on Tuesday night. This was like a shot of caffeine. Perked my ass right up. All 4 guys were great, yes, including Thorpe and King. The energy level was silly. Some of the spots were incredible and inventive. Others were a bit of an eye roll just because they had to get set up. Some strong false finishes and fakeouts. The Saints ejection was nails from a uniqueness factor. What stood out most to me is that all 4 of these guys were heels, yet the crowd was popping like crazy. Page winning was obviously the right move. I kind of feel nuts giving it this grade, but I was at 4 stars, A-. I reserve the right to change it because I'm definitely going to watch it again, but I think that's going to stick. This was a really awesome match and a great opener for NXT. Now, before we get into, predicting Stand and Deliver, I'm really not sure what WWE is going to do with Wes Lee at this juncture. I like him leading DuPont and Igwe, but it just seems like they're a group of convenience right now because they have nothing else for him. I'm not necessarily against Wes still being in NXT from the standpoint that they need veterans down there. But if he's ever going to win the title, if he's never going to win the title, you got to wonder what his future looks like in WWE. Main roster tag team would probably be the move. And it should have been long ago. He would enhance that division immensely. But his partner is in TNA Wrestling. And Wes hasn't linked up with anyone else. But that would be the perfect use of him, just to get him into the WWE main roster tag team division. But down in NXT right now, with him still there, especially now that he's cut the braids off, he just feels like a super senior in high school or like Van Wilder in college. Someone who's just sticking around too long, doesn't really have anything left to do, and everyone else around him is younger. That's Wes Lee right now. Now, in terms of this match, we have Saints against Page. I just cannot imagine a scenario where Saints drops the title, given he just won it a couple weeks ago. And that's why I'm so surprised they made that change on television when they could have potentially run a triple threat here at Stand and Deliver with all 3 guys. Now, look, it's not that WWE needed another multi-person match this weekend. It just would have made storyline sense to do it that way. It should be a lot of fun seeing them in the ring together. Page has been great since joining NXT. We haven't seen much of Saints, but so far so good. I just cannot imagine a way in which Page wins this title here. Rather, what makes by far the most sense is Page establishing Saints in NXT, given he's a former NXT champion. So if Saints beats him, all of a sudden he looks completely legitimate. I believe that'll be the case. I don't know that this is going to be match of the night, but I actually think it could surprise with its quality. North American Championship ladder match. The title will be on the line. Involved in this, Kalani Jordan, Zarya, Sol Ruka, Izzy Dame, and as mentioned, 2 spots to be determined. Lani acted an ass to Zaruka backstage before Izzy dropped in, saying she liked the old Lani better. She's the only one. The new Lani, it is a bit over the top, but it's far better than the old Lani. So the first qualifier, Tatum Paxley against Lola Vice. I was so excited to see Tatum announced for this match. And then Lola came out, and it just crushed me because there was no way that Tatum was going to beat Lola here. Just not the way that both of them have been booked. Some nice counters by them early. Paxley hit underneath the ring as Gigi Dolan distracted, allowing Tatum to snap Lola's arm on the ring truss. Paxley then did something I've never seen before, a standing crossbody into Vice's back while she was standing in the corner. Tatum was straight dominating here. Lola avoided her finisher, hit an anti-air super kick, and then added the spinning back fist and got the expected win. Sorry, Sean. Wrong winner here, buddy. Why do you hate me? Why do you hate NXT viewers so much? As each month and week passes, I continue to not understand why Tatum Paxley remains so immensely underrated and underutilized in NXT. She's excellent in the ring. She's excellent with her character work. She can cut promos. She has presence. She looks the part. She is all you could want from an up-and-coming NXT talent. She's in a tag team with Dolan that doesn't even get regular TV time. They're not getting called up together anytime soon. And she's in a situation where they need fresh blood for the North American Championship ladder match, a match type, by the way, in which she would thrive. Yet instead of Sean choosing her, he goes with a ground-based wrestler who is simply less talented overall. And that is no shade against Vice. She works hard. She has improved massively over the last year. But she's ice cold right now. She's been on the shelf, basically. This was a massive missed opportunity to elevate Tatum because she deserves it, and she simply would have made the ladder match better, even if she didn't win. Hugely frustrating. Lola has qualified. The next match was Thea Hale against Carmen Petrovic. Hale made her surprise return here. This was actually spoiled by a graphic that was posted moments earlier in the show, but luckily I missed it. People make mistakes, but WWE production lately has been all over the place. It's literally hysterical to hear the way that Thea comes out to the ring now, because with Def Rebel, everyone has to have a voiceover. The intro to her entrance music says, "I'm a grown-ass woman," which is just like, come on. It's the dumbest intro soundbite ever. It's almost a Def Rebel parody at this point.
Come on, Oos. It's a joke, right? It's a joke, Oos. You ribbing me?
And what was strange is, as bad as that was, the song actually sounded great. And so I did some research. It turns out, surprise, surprise, it's not a Def Rebel song. It's actually a track that Eddie Edwards, the independent wrestler, the former TNA wrestler, used in Impact and TNA. So I don't know how they got the rights to it or all the details behind that, but WWE literally took a good song, added a stupid beginning to it, and boom, WWE theme. Height of absurdity. Now, before the match, Thea showed up backstage and basically gave Andre Chase her blessing to restart Chase U. He was worried about ruining other students' lives, but she basically being there proved otherwise. She dominated this match. Not quite a squash, pretty close. She won with the Kimura lock. Now, when I suggested last week that Hale would return, frankly, I was just coming up with options. I had no idea it would actually happen. I actually thought it was more likely she returned to NXT after Stand and Deliver, but I'm glad she got into this match. She should make it a lot more fun. Now, whenever we do, three-way, four-way, or five-way match, you need to do a process of elimination to determine who would really make the most sense to walk out of this as North American champion. And the two people who absolutely, positively do not, really three people who do not, are Lonnie, who already had the title initially, completely floundered with it, Izzy Dame, who's just starting to get reestablished as a woman on this roster after being out of action for an extended period of time. I don't think she was injured or anything. They just didn't have anything for her. And then Lola, who is perfectly fine and capable and all that. But again, she just got off a long layoff where she wasn't on TV, wasn't wrestling, and has not done any character work. So that brings us down to Zarya, Sol Ruka, and Thea Hale. And this is an immensely difficult prediction for a couple reasons. The primary one is that Sol and Zarya are in the middle of this tag team run, and it is working extremely well, Zaruka. But as much as they're best friends and getting along and putting on really fun matches together, there's no women's tag team title in NXT. So how much further can that actually go? So you could say, well, why don't you put the title on one of them? The other one gets jealous, turns heel, or maybe doesn't, but they immediately feud after it, or they think that they can remain friends despite one of them being champion, but after a month, 2 months, 3 months, they begin feuding over the title. That's logical, and I think that is definitely a direction that they could go. But there's just a sneaking suspicion inside me that as much as I believe Soul should win this title, I think they're going to give it to Thea Hale. I think they want to strap up someone young and exciting, and also someone who can drop the title in short order, because this is just stand and deliver. So you can give Thea the win, let her have a run for, 3-4 weeks. She fights a legitimate heel, loses the title, could be Izzy, could be someone else, drops the title, and she's so freaking young at this point that you could build up to next stand and deliver, or, even 18 months from now, her finding herself and just wrestling around and trying tag teams, trying this, trying that, and eventually she works her way into regaining the championship. So that's just the direction I feel like they're going to go. Kind of like when Indy Hartwell won the title in that ladder match. That was a different situation. She got hurt in the match. She got called up. She had to relinquish the title anyway. It was just a mess. But I could definitely see Thea returning, getting that huge pop she got, by the way, on Tuesday. I don't know if I completely explained that. And then just immediately coming in and winning this match and pissing off a lot of women in the division. So Hale is my pick, but I do believe that the new champion will come out of the trio of Hale, Ruka, or Zarya. Let's go ahead and move to the NXT Men's Championship. Obafemi, Trick Williams, and Javon Evans. Now, let me be clear. I'm pretty sure this is going to main event the show. And that is, of course, frustrating for the Silver King because the women have been booked better for an extended period of time. They largely are better. And they're the most over and exciting people on the entire roster right now, particularly Stephanie Vaquer, who is probably the number one most over person in NXT. They're the rightful main eventers for NXT Stand and Deliver. And even though I can't force that to happen, I can't call up Shawn Michaels and say, hey, you got to put the women in the main event. I'm not Paul Levesque. I can main event them here on the Getting Over Wrestling podcast. So we will be discussing them last. Instead, we're going to talk about the men first. NXT Men's Championship, as I said. Obafemi defending against Trick Williams and Javon Evans in a triple threat. Now, they closed NXT on Tuesday night. Trick referred to the Carmelo Hayes line from last week, saying you can either die a hero or live long enough to become a villain. He told Oba that he was getting his crown back. Femi called him a broken record, saying he would win and finally move on from Trick. Williams said it would take more than Black Panther chance to make him real. I actually thought this was a great line. The crowd did not sell it well. Javon was out last, and he basically just repeated that fans are tired of Trick saying the same old shit. He put over Oba as a future WrestleMania main eventer, not if but when, basically saying he's got the pedigree, whereas Evans was never supposed to make it to WWE. Femi said Javon is the future, but he's the present, and NXT still revolves around him as champion, while Evans continues to prove himself to be a child. It ended with Javon saying that he would wrestle circles around both of them, so they twice threw him out of the ring, kind of Io Sky style. And then eventually he came in with a double springboard cutter to take them both out, grab the title, and stand tall at the end of NXT. And look, this was meant to be a showcase for Javon. We love him around here. Fans from the beginning. Sky is the limit. But this promo was immensely disjointed. He was all over the place. It basically included no ammunition for Trick. He was better going at Oba for sure, but he just rambled and rambled. What this segment told me undoubtedly is that the women's storyline is better and stronger. And look, credit to the men for putting together a comprehensive storyline and taking a big step in revitalizing the men's division overall, both when it comes to the main event division, this, and the mid-card division with Saints and Paige and all those guys. This was down in the dumps 3 months ago, and they have revitalized it to a significant degree. But apples to apples, it still does not compare to what the women are doing. Now, predicting this match is immensely difficult because there are so many factors involved. The most important one being Dark State. They have been in and around these guys for an extended period. We've gone from thinking that, Trick is the clear leader to perhaps none of them are, to there's been, talk among fans, what if it's actually Javon? Because he's young like they are, and that could work. Javon, for me, is way, way, way too much of a babyface and way too young for it to make sense that he leads a faction. Trick, it would make all the sense in the world, especially because despite the fact that he's over and he can cut a promo and he has a lot of energy and charisma and all that stuff, he is not ready for the main roster when it comes to in-ring. So you give him something to sink his teeth into in NXT, leading a faction and being a heel champion. All of a sudden, you have 6, 9, 12 more months of Trick, and he becomes ready for the main roster in WWE. Oba, it's been great that he's been champion. The reign hasn't necessarily been anything that special, but it's also been relatively short, so it's tough to blame him for anything like that. There's no way that he's the leader of Dark State. That would make less than 0 sense, especially given all the times that he's been attacked and stalked by them. But if this match does not include Dark State, then Oba would be my prediction. So I'm going to give you, 2 predictions, and I'll tell you which one I'm leaning towards at the end here. So first, if this match is clean, there's no Dark State, just these 3 guys wrestling, and we get a winner, then I have Oba pinning Javon Evans, retaining the championship. It just makes the most sense. I don't exactly know why they would do it any other way. Oba should not take the fall. Trick probably shouldn't take the fall. Javon, he's 19 years old or 20 years old. He can easily lose this match. If there is Dark State involvement, then I still just don't believe it would be Javon. I think it would be Trick leading them for all the reasons I just mentioned. And then if that is the case, Trick Williams walks out as the new NXT champion. And given Oba's reign, as we tape this show, is actually 98 days, which is exactly, by the way, as long as Trick's last reign. And in fact, there has not been an NXT champion with a reign that has eclipsed 100 days since Ilya Dragunov, which ended back in 2023. So that's how long it's been. We had multiple successive reigns like that. Braun Breaker was nearly a calendar year. Carmelo Hayes was 2/3 of a year, and Ilya Dragunov was 2/3 of a year as well. But ever since then, it's been basically 75 100-day reigns, one after another, after another, after another. Really 4 straight. Trick, Page, Trick, and then Oba. It does feel a little weird for someone to become the 3-time NXT champion. But if you were going to do it, putting it on Trick and giving it to him as a heel while he continues to develop, that is the right move. I maintain he's just not ready for prime time yet. He is as a character. He's not as a wrestler. Especially not with Trick Shot as his finisher, as you guys have heard me say many, many times. So ultimately, I'd love to go with Oba and think it goes straight up, but I'm going to lean with the chaos element, with Dark State interfering, helping Trick. He becomes the new NXT champion. He leads that faction, and that's what we get coming out of Stand and Deliver. Will it happen? I have absolutely no idea, but I think it would be more interesting than the alternative. And the truth is, NXT kind of needs something like that right now. The booking's fine. The creative is fine. The shows are exciting. Dark State's working. But if you put Trick there as the heel leader, you're cooking with something. And I think ratings would go up and the interest would go up. And all of a sudden, you're developing a stable of babyface challengers. He could have that title for, another 200 days or something like that. Eventually, whether it's Oba that beats him, whether it's Javon that levels up and beats him, you're going to make someone against the heel Trick. I don't think you're going to make someone in this match on its own. So let's go ahead and move to my main event, our main event, the people's main event. And fingers crossed that it also main events NXT Stand and Deliver. The NXT Women's Championship, Stephanie Vaquer, defending against Julia, Jordynne Grace, and Jada Parker in a fatal 4-way match. There was an extended video package for Jordynne showing her entire transformation from, as she said, being the ugly duckling with negative aura to building her body into an atomic bomb, the Juggernaut. Grace said she forced her way into the conversation and now faces the greatest opportunity of her career. I absolutely loved this. Jordynne has actually needed something like this since she debuted, just given a large portion of the audience probably had no idea about her past. I'm glad it finally came. Now, you may say, Silver King, look, the way Jordynne did her transformation, perhaps it was, not entirely natural or what, WWE should be promoting or whatever the case. And yeah, there's something to that. But when you see what she looked like before and what she looked like now and how much effort it took to do that, aided or not, it's still an immensely touching story, especially when she gets into the emotions of all of it and you can see that she's being genuine in her feelings at an absolute minimum. It just added so much to her character. It gave fans actual reason to buy into and support her, besides the fact that she looks great and is a tremendous in-ring wrestler. So Julia later said that she attacked Stephanie because she watched as Vaquer celebrated and never considered offering her a rematch. So it was clear that their friendship only extended to the title itself. She put over Jada as confident and said she would introduce Jordan, who is strong, to actual strong style. Julia said losing the title only made her more dangerous, and now she can show what beautiful madness actually means. This was the best character work that we've gotten from Julia in WWE to this point in her career. Nothing else has come close to this. I wish more of the promo was in English, simply because she's been working on it and should showcase it. No other reason than that. But it mostly hit. The logic was a little bit weak because she's only been without the title for like 3 weeks, a month. And it's not really Stephanie's fault that she didn't immediately call her and be like, hey, do you want to get a rematch for the title that you lost? Right? We still don't know the whole story on why she actually lost the title and why all of this is happening. But look, something about Julia as a happy to be there babyface, it just did not hit all the way. And anyone knows her character in Stardom would assume that would be the case. The madness coming out of her as a heel who does what she wants and just doesn't care, that totally plays. It was really interesting how Jordan, and I'll get to them in a minute, Jada and Stephanie, they all had these emotional promos talking about their background and history and family. And Julia's just sitting in a dark room, basically saying, I'm going to kick the shit out of these other women because I'm a badass and I'm mad. It was really cool. It was a great juxtaposition between her and everyone else. So speaking of the others, Jada cut her promo walking the streets of Port St. Lucie. I didn't realize she grew up so close to me. Parker pointed out she's the only homegrown talent in the match, and she told the story about always competing with men and going into soccer when her dad wouldn't let her play football. She literally cried about losing her uncle, saying she doesn't have an attitude, life made her hard, and she's going to show the world that she don't play. Man, what am I even supposed to say about this? Am I supposed to say, I told you so? Jada Parker has it.
You have it. You couldn't get rid of it. You couldn't sell it if you wanted to. You are it.
She is the total package and then some. Just straight up special. The character work, A+. The promo, A+. The ring, okay, yeah, C+. She needs to get better in the ring, and she will. She's a developmental talent who never wrestled before. It will get there. But everything else about her screams WWE superstar. She is I don't want to say WrestleMania main eventer. She's a pay-per-view premium live event main eventer on the main roster. I've compared her previously to Triple H. That's the type of career I truly believe that she can have, where she's almost always a heel, but she can be a babyface because she has that kind of personality, and fans are going to love her even if they're not supposed to. That's Jada Parker on the main roster. This was so immensely impressive. She should be proud of herself, and I cannot wait to see how she continues to develop. Vaquer's package focused on her arriving in her home nation of Chile, where she met with her family, appeared on TV, got recognized by the mayor of San Fernando. While it was great to see Stephanie happy and with her family and all that, it just paled in comparison to the other three packages, and it had absolutely nothing to do with her preparation for the match or her opponents or why she deserves to be in the spot or anything like that. It was just out of place alongside the other three, but it was in place with Grace and Parker because it was personal. Whereas Julia, like I said, it was all about her just wanting to beat the shit out of people. Vaquer's, it was the lone package that didn't build the match or share her perspective on what's to come. It didn't diminish the other three. It just didn't accomplish anything for her. Well, that is the full breakdown of this fatal four-way match. We did not get to see them live. Obviously, we had seen them live previously plenty of times on the road to Stand and Deliver, not knowing that we were necessarily going to get a triple threat or what, of course, became a fatal four-way with the return of Julia. When it comes to predicting the match, the truth is that all four women here, if we're doing the process of elimination, I can make a case for all of them. Jada, you elevate her, you put her over. Stephanie, at the height of her, powers right now in NXT, and you say, yeah, this is the next woman. And, Jada doesn't have to hold the title for a while. You do a hot potato situation. Julia wins it back. Jordan wins it back. Stephanie wins it back. Doesn't necessarily matter. But you could do that. Jordan coming in and winning this title right away, it wouldn't be problematic because she was a long reigning TNA wrestling champion. She is definitely a main event woman who should hold a strap like this. But it just feels like she hasn't been established enough where it makes sense for her to be the woman in NXT right now. Julia winning the title right back, unless it was a situation where, again, I mentioned this previously, WWE was operating from an area where they did not know whether Julia would be available, so they had to take the title off of her. And now that she not only is available, but she's in the match, they're going to put it right back on her, unless that is what happened and they have long-term plans that require her to be champion. Winning it right back off of Stephanie in this manner would be a little bit rough, except it's a four-way. So she could, like, let's say, pin Jada. Stephanie loses the title. She's still never been pinned. But the other issue is, and this is what we talked about when we compared Stephanie relinquishing the title to Keith Lee relinquishing the title. I'm talking about the North American Championship in this case. It would be very similar to Keith Lee in that she would give up one title and then get beaten for the other in immensely short order. I think Keith Lee's title reign was like 35, 42 days, something crazy short. The only real reason to take the title off of Julia is if she has so impressed WWE. They're like, screw it. We need her on the main roster. And if they're going to do that, and that is pretty much what happened with Keith Lee, by the way, but if they're going to do that with Stephanie, it's going to be really tough to argue her dropping the strap. I would not pin her in that case, as I just said. But ultimately, this for me is a way for Vaquera to retain the title, get one up on everyone in this match. She'll probably pin Parker. That's what I would guess. And you still have out there Stephanie and Jordan, Stephanie and Julia. You have major shows through the rest of the year. You let her go through a couple of those. She eventually drops the title to Jordan or Julia. Then she moves to the main roster, and her run in NXT winds up being 9 months, maybe 1 calendar year, something like that. So I do have Jada Parker walking out of NXT Stand and Deliver still the women's champion. So despite all the title matches on the show, I'm only predicting one title change, and that, of course, is Trick taking it. But I got to tell you, this is one of those shows where it just feels immensely unpredictable, perhaps due in significant part to the fact that the build, the go-home, didn't actually finalize until NXT ended on Tuesday night. I will reiterate one more time. 2 matches added to the card, 2 qualifiers for a ladder match, and 2 number 1 contenders. And when you're naming number 1 contenders and qualifiers that late, you don't necessarily have that much time to develop storylines where you're looking at them and you're saying, oh yeah, they're clearly going to go ahead and win the title. In fact, the only prediction that I made here that I'm super confident about is Saints retaining his title. Every other match I could see going a different way than I've predicted, and that is not how I felt on our WWE WrestleMania 41 instant analysis, where I was pretty confident in every single prediction that I made. So it's going to be really interesting to see whether Stand and Deliver is totally predictable, like I just did, or whether it flies in the face of our expectations, and whether it over-delivers or under-delivers from a booking standpoint, surprises us. So before we get out of here, I'm going to give you a pre-show expectation grade for NXT Stand and Deliver. Normally, when it comes to NXT, I am super positive, and, I'll look at a show and I'll say, you know what? Even one of these premium live events, the card may not be that strong, but the level of talent on it is such, and the booking from Shawn Michaels is such, that it could over-deliver to such a great degree that I'm going to start it at X high number. Here, I just don't necessarily feel the same way. The talent is there, and the potential match quality is there, but the storylines coming in have been a lot weaker than normal, especially for the bottom 2/3 of this card. So I'm still pretty positive about it and optimistic, but I'm going to come in 90 out of 100 in A-. I think that's perfectly fair. It could fall slightly below expectation, but still be in that B+ range and still be a solid show, or it could easily exceed expectation, get into a high A- or even a low A. I think the ceiling for this is a mid-A. The tag team match isn't strong enough. The Women's North American Championship ladder match, the opponents, the people competing, some of them should be there. Some of them shouldn't be. Those 2 low card matches are just kind of random the way they've been put together. But I do believe if they do run with Dark State, and if they do run with Dark State and Trick as the leader, then by the time we finish this show, we may be saying, holy crap, the landscape of NXT has changed, and fingers crossed that that's exactly what we get. Now, a reminder, you could submit your own pre-show expectation grade for NXT Stand and Deliver by following us on Twitter at Getting Overcast. You'll also be able to vote in our post-show poll and give us a final grade for NXT Stand and Deliver. We're also on social media on Blue Sky at Getting Over, and we'll be tweeting highlights and clips and all that type of stuff there as well. Unfortunately, the poll function only works right now on Twitter. As soon as NXT Stand and Deliver goes off the air, we will have an instant analysis podcast that drops right here, and it enters your ear holes as soon as you're able to download it. Now, because it is such a short turnaround, it is quite possible that we will have an extended second look at Stand and Deliver the following week in our NXT episode. And there will be a separate NXT episode the following week, but we're going to do our best to turn it around as comprehensively, as quickly as we possibly can. Because, of course, just a couple hours later, we're going to have your WWE WrestleMania 41 Night 1 instant analysis. And then 24 hours after that, your WWE WrestleMania 41 Night 2 instant analysis. A reminder on those social media accounts I mentioned, don't just vote in the polls. You can send in questions and comments for the show, thoughts that you observe from Stand and Deliver and WrestleMania. We'll try to get some of them on the instant analysis. Most likely, the majority of them will come on our second look episodes the following week. I just wanted to put that out there as a reminder. That does wrap up this show. On the way out, I already gave you the schedule, so allow me to remind you that the Getting Over Wrestling podcast
It's all about the five.
Head over to Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Leave a 5-star rating, especially on Spotify. That 5-star rating, super important. On Apple Podcasts, leave a 5-star written review. If you do, we will read it live right here on the show. And please do not forget,
I happen to love the number 5.
Hope you do as well. $5 a month, $50 for the entire year. You can become an official Getting Overhead. Just visit buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Sign up. You'll get bonus audio, the fastest 5 minutes in professional wrestling, instant reactions to every major show, exclusive news analysis posts every week. Buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Please support the continuation of the Getting Over Wrestling podcast financially. That wraps up this edition of the program. As mentioned, we have 4 more WWE podcasts heading toward your ear holes this week, full of performance-enhancing audio. If you are a brand new listener, hit that subscribe button. If you have not already listened to our WWE WrestleMania 41 Ultimate Preview, make sure you go into the feed and do exactly that. Folks, this is the Silver King signing off and leaving you with just 3 final words. Bye for now.